What's up, YouTubers? Today we're going to talk about the Demko knives AD20.5 full titanium with 3V steel. This is the Knifecenter exclusive. Exclusive doesn't mean that it's a sprint run. It just means that it's exclusive to that dealer. They sold out. They should come back. So keep an eye out for them. This particular knife has a 3.15-inch blade of CPM 3V steel, which is very tough, semi-stainless. Retains a decent edge. Not fantastic, I found, but it's easy to sharpen. So I really like this, and it makes sense why like Bark River Knives has these because when you're out in the field, the easy to sharpen part is pretty important, or slash even just strop up. I didn't really sharpen it; I just stropped it on the the Spyderco Sharp Makers. We saw that this knife weighs 4.4 ounces, and it priced at $315. So it's an awful lot more. Then we'll just go ahead and bring out the counterpart, which is the original AD20.5. That one has AUS 10A steel and the Grivery, basically plastic, covers on top of essentially a cartridge. And so that's really the difference in your price there. Obviously, most of it's going to be in this. Actually, I think it's probably equally split between the 3V steel versus the AUS 10A and the titanium versus the Grivery here. So this is the shark's foot blade. That one will come out in just one brief moment more. So in terms of some comparisons or alternatives of this knife, for me, it was the one that I really think about the most is probably the Benchmade Mini Adamas in terms of just kind of blade use, heavy use, certainly kind of thick and chubby blade stock. We'll go ahead and pull those up there. So the Adamas is actually, the Mini Adamas is just a little bit thicker blade steel or blade stock. But in terms of kind of just the handling and use of it, that was definitely one of those that I certainly thought of. And that goes for like $225. That's in Crewwear steel, also a tough steel and with similar properties. And then the other one that I thought of is, maybe as an alternative to the XM18 3-inch from Rick Hinder Knives. This one is, has, again, the smaller blade, thick stock, titanium, and definitely for harder use. Again, we're talking about harder, not hard use. Not going to be batoning these things. So those are definitely some of the alternatives. And of course, the Hinder Knives goes for $425. Now, thinking about, they did make this, or they sold this one also in the shark's foot blade. So just imagine, if you will, that this is the shark foot one with the titanium on there. So we'll just kind of put that up there. Yeah, kind of, you can see what it would look like. As far as some alternatives to this in terms of blade use, I think the Wee Knives Snex Mini Buster definitely kind of has that, sheep's footy Warncliffe blade profile, and maybe kind of use case scenario. That one goes for $300. And then you have the Brian Brown Knives Jaeger M. This one's made by Riot. Also, this is a little bit different use case just because it has a super high hollow ground on this one. And definitely kind of a little bit of a different feel, but I think for a similar use case, not a bad comparison on that one. So I think this one I recall was $350 or $375. So you're up there in prices, and with this knife being $315, we'll go back to just the full tie clip point here. With this knife being $315, you're kind of talking about that price range, and both of those are full titanium frame locks. So I think that some decent comparisons or alternatives that would be out there. In terms of the pros of this knife, the 3V steel I found was very tough, did not chip. I stabbed it into metal things to see if it would it did actually roll over just a little bit, but it did not actually chip at all. So in that sense, I had on basically the quick impressions, one of my viewers basically commented and basically said that 3V is going to be probably similar edge retention, but it's just not going to chip, and I found that to be true. It was very good. It reminded me kind of based on my experience of stabbing into metal, of M4 steel. So yeah, 3V was easy to sharpen. It just took 8 little draws through the Sharp Maker, following stabbing into the metal quite a few times to just, I won't even say sharpen that back up, just drop that thing back up. You have obviously all the awesomeness of the shark lock. You have the strength, the ease of manipulation, left-handed. Everything works great. It does come with a pocket clip for left-handed carry. That's a great thing. Safety of return also. Your hand does not you do not have to put your fingers in the blade path upon returning, so that's really good. And then of course with this shark lock, you get all the fidgetiness that we've come to love in the knife world. The overall strength of this knife I really like. I'm actually glad that they did not mill this out, not only for the strength but for the balance. And yeah, I always have the balance point as my opening picture for full reviews, but this one is perfectly balanced, so I really appreciate that. One that I've actually replaced, I had replaced with the RGT scales, ended up a little bit blade heavy forward just because my card was awfully light. So yeah, I actually appreciate that, and that's one of the strengths of this one. The dual pocket clips, of course, we talked about for lefties, and actually as a pocket clip goes, this one's perfect. This one's really good. It's this is a little bit thinner knife, we'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, the pocket clip was fantastic. Goes in and out easy, one-handed. So yeah, everything's good about that. And then the last thing is, and I brought this up in the first video that I talked about this, first impressions, it has a marvelous chalky texture. So I actually absolutely love it. It wore pretty well. I just carried this for a couple weeks. Don't see any snail trails. I think it's gonna lose to keys or something like that and build some snail trails. But yeah, this one has a great chalky texture, so really love that. In terms of the cons of this one, this is kind of a big one for me, just because it was so far off. But the clip side actually had a 17. It was a very unevenly sharpened edge bevel. So what you end up with is a really short one over here, which is low angle, and then quite a steep one over here. This one I found was in between about 17, maybe in between 16 and 17 degrees on this side. So that as I ran it through the Spyderco Sharp Maker, I ended up creating a micro bevel, which is very much expected, and I do that when I'm I find that I run into that with Spyderco knives too. So not a big deal. It just drops it off and creates just the small, tiniest micro bevel, but it does rip that edge back into shape. Now the problem was really on the show side here. It's actually in between 21 and 22 degrees. So when I dragged it through with a 20 degree per side, it doesn't ever even touch the edge of that. It actually ends up just ending up on the top of that bevel or the heel of that bevel. So I don't even get anything, and I had to actually end up kind of turning it a little bit just to get a little bit of exposure to that. And I realized that was kind of a bad flaw, because if it's not even 20 degrees, 3V would be just fine and stable with that. I think that was just definitely a miss. And also I'll say, not only was it really 5 degrees off, and so very not symmetrical at all, but it was a barely a working edge. I actually found that my OS 10A ones came with a much more refined edge, and I appreciated that. It almost, I feel like they were rushing to get this order out in the end, for what, I don't know, but it just seemed a little bit rushed on there. So I had to do a little bit of work on this just to make it back to, where you just really cut through paper very easily at all. So that was kind of a problem. This is a very thin knife in the hand. You can see how narrow it is. I mean, we'll compare it back to kind of an alternative. If you take a look at this next to the Spyderco, the Benchmade Mini Adamas, it's not even close. The Adamas is hand filling, and this one is hand skinny. So this is definitely more EDC. Don't want to carve on this in a whole lot of time. So that's what it is. The irony of that is being a really thin one, and it actually carries nice in the pocket, but it is still pretty thick blade stock, so it's not a super slicing machine, but worked well enough. The shark lock release always does in a saber grip just dig in and stick out a little bit. If you find yourself in a nice triangle position where you can get that, usually up in this one, yeah, that's probably a better view, then it doesn't interfere so much. But if you want just a back saber grip, that does dig into your thumb on anything that you're pushing down hard on. Now that being said, on the Mini Adamas, for whatever reason, and this was one of my drawbacks on there, is you have that little triangle that sticks up on that knife too. So they both share that equivalent thing, and that's what it made me think of that knife entirely. Overall, are the upgrades worth it? I think, if you're into the titanium materials, it gives it definitely a solidity to it, a nice feel. It almost feels like just holding it, not as a use, just in hand, it kind of reminds me of like a Sebenza a little bit, where it does have chamfering around here, kind of flattish feel there. and it has that nice chalkiness. So in that context, yeah, it's worth it. But if you're looking at this knife for a user, I might stick with just the cheaper one. You know, they're both going to be equally easy to sharpen up. And for that, you know, that's a lot of price difference, 315 versus 149. It may not be worth it. This one definitely is, you know, good EDC carry, a little bit higher price. And I think maybe, you know, originally I was of the ilk that maybe they should have used Magna Cut. And because, you know, they had a largely stainless or completely stainless in terms of the titanium, but a largely stainless, and then they went with basically a semi-stainless steel. And I was like, yeah, they should have gone with Magna Cut because it adds the additional, you know, like the toughness to it, and it has the stainlessness. So the toughness would probably, maybe, I don't know if it would be all the way up to 3V or not. I'm not a metallurgist, go to a Knife Steel Nerds for that. But just the fact that you would have something much more stainless, I think Magna Cut, especially at this price, would have made a little more sense. Who knows? Maybe Magna Cut wasn't available in Taiwan. They couldn't get it over there. Obviously, this order was put in probably some time ago when there was a massive shortage of Magna Cut and everybody on Earth was trying to buy it. So, I don't know. That's just my little, I won't say rant and rave, but I think that would have been a better choice, all things considered, maybe, because then you would have toughness that would go with it and the stainlessness. It's, you know, something it's less apt to chip than, let's say, like a 20 CV on this one. So that one wouldn't have made as much sense. So yeah, hope you did enjoy this. If you did, like and subscribe, and have a great day. Take care now. What's up, YouTubers? Time for the full review of the Demko Knives AD20.5 full titanium with CPM of 3V steel. This is the Knifecenter exclusive. Exclusive doesn't mean that it's a sprint run. It means that they've made a deal with this, excuse me,